Okay, I guess we're recording now.
More or less.
Local on the computer.
Okay. And do we have anybody dialed in, or just?
I think no one really seems to want to.
Okay, so it's
be in remotely or anything. So.
Okay, so it's just gonna be the three of us then. Okay.
Yeah.
And this will be posted on YouTube.
I think that's
by the end of the day. So.
Most likely.
Yeah.
I do have a Christmas party after this to go to.
Yeah.
So, did you want to start with the questions, Hakeem? Or do you want me to ask and you'll just
ask and.
Okay, sounds good.
So, I forget your name already.
I'm Craig.
Craig?
Yeah.
Okay, and Hakeem? Okay, and you're with CBSA, and you're with?
I'm with PSC, Public Service Commission.
Okay.
Yeah, so our problem more or less is to help you sort of get oriented with originally in the boot camp we had thought that we wanted to build a way for Canadians to have one digital ID, and related to that they'd have all their personal information sort of stored somehow so that they could easily apply for ESDC programs. And then so after we saw you how much work you were working, like your area was working on and the various other government departments, we decided, well, maybe the one digital ID might not be the idea just because the space is so busy. And so then we thought, because Kevin Love, he was our problem designer.
Okay.
And we said the other sort of part of the problem was to help Canadians apply for various programs within ESDC.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's more or less like because we've sort of been questioning really what our goal is. We're still sort of in the middle of doing the final, but I think the gist of where we're trying to get to is just aiding Canadians make the right choice and to sort of, instead of just being stuck inside a form and maybe not knowing if they're eligible or not, I think our idea is sort of to help them understand if they're eligible and sort of work them down the path without it getting too onerous or too heavy right at the start.
Yeah, so I'll give you a sense of like the problem area that I'm focused on. It's digital identity, but I would say at a developing literally like the infrastructure, new infrastructure to enable this to happen. Like we've had an evolution over the past decade with authentication, and now we're moving into what we're calling trusted digital identity. Literally, it's almost like laying the sewer lines and stuff, infrastructure that is absolutely important, but it's very hard. It takes a lot of investment. You have to think about it long term. You have to get like lots of the big institutions on side. So really, it's not a very sexy problem at the end of the day. But it's something that has to be done. So really, the idea, what we're trying to do is that when you transact either with your phone or with your computer or maybe some other device, the service provider on the other side just knows who you are, and they have confidence in the information about you, and they can just get into the business of providing you with the actual service without having to do all that identity proofing or double checking that information. So really, what I'm focused on is taking all that necessary stuff, but it's very complicated and very risk prone. Digital utility stuff, take it away so you can actually just focus on the service. And literally that's what we're doing with the provinces. Like we've got Alberta onboarded into my Service Canada account, and we are doing the province of BC as well. So when the person shows up to authenticate, if you will, they know who they are. Bingo. They know their name with confidence. They know their date of birth, and there could be other information as well. So we're flipping the model on its head, and really trying to make it easier for the service providers, so they don't have to engineer any of that stuff. So I would say that what you want to do is focus on those problems of after you know the individual, you know who you're dealing with, and going from there. So
there are two I guess levels. There's the identity problem,
Mhm.
and then there's the integration with all the services.
Yep.
So you guys are right now laying the infrastructure for the identity
Absolutely.
issue.
Absolutely. So when I present myself electronically to the federal government just knows who I am. So I don't have to go through a separate process with CRA, a separate process with ESDC and CBSA or whatnot. You just know that it's me, that it's Craig or that it's Hakeem, and then you can go through a lot of engineering beneath the surface that has to be done. But the idea is to make it very simple for individuals to present themselves electronically. And we're building, like I'm working on what's called the assessment. I'm looking at the provinces, looking at their processes to see if we can actually trust them, rely on them for federal services. And then we're building like another major architectural component called Sign in Canada. It's the acceptance platform. So that's where you would go once to authenticate yourself, and then you'd be redirected off to the service of choice.
So is that going to be like a service that's going to be called in by all these different, I guess, like anybody can use that for the authentication?
Yeah, eventually. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. I know like there's Microsoft is working on passwordless.
Oh yeah, that's all the authentication stuff. Like the way things are going is that we want to get rid of like the username and passwords. Okay. And there's a lot of technology, passwordless technology. There's the FIDO specification, like with the hardware keys, so that to make sure it's really you. I've got one of these cryptographic keys that I use.
Okay.
So all that stuff we've kind of pushed down below the level of abstraction that we're working at. So by the time you show up for a business, you've already authenticated, you've already gone through this stuff, and we know it's you. That's really the idea.
Yeah. Sorry, and there's the whole issue with privacy, right? How much?
Yep.
As you said, the main thing is trust. Like people will trust that, nothing.
Yeah. So the new model, I would say that we're promoting. It's not about integrating big systems in the background and sharing information between them. That's kind of the old IT integration model, saying, hey, we know information about you, let's share so that everybody knows everything about you before you show up. We're turning that model on its head and saying, well, why don't we equip individuals with the ability to present their own information that has been verified as correct by an authority, and I can present it directly. It's not that different than you presenting your paper document, but doing it with a cryptographic equivalent. So we're really focusing on, there's some emerging standards with the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, on what are called decentralized identifiers and verifiable credentials. And we're really focusing on those two emerging standards and related technologies, so that if you go to your province of choice or your province of residency and they issue you a digital identity and it's in your phone and it can be all cryptographically verifiable, then another service, I can use it and they can accept it and they can verify the stuff independently, and they know it's you and that's actually you controlling your information. So there's no need to do any more identity proofing because they know that information is correct and it's about you.
Were you looking at any ability to, because some people are already in certain programs, was there any look at, I know you're saying that you're not going to let the systems internally share, but can the person extract the information that they got at the system, or is that a little too deep?
Yeah, I would say we're just not there yet. So one of the scenarios might be, we've had some initial discussions, is that and this is where this model is really interesting. So let's say you go to Canada Revenue, so you logged in, and for a lot of people, they need to have their proof of income for applying for rent or applying for a bank loan. The way it's done today is that you go there and then you log into the MyCRA account and you either print something off or download a PDF, which is, PDF has no security features whatsoever. I mean, well, it does, but when you print it off, it doesn't.
Or if it's stored on your phone and then your phone gets hacked.
Yeah. So, we're looking at some ideas that proof of income, for example, could be issued to your phone and can be independently verifiable. Like the model works, but we're just not there yet. So the idea, the areas that are really emerging, that's really hot, it's really fragmented, we're not so sure how it's going to play out, is the whole digital wallet space. And digital wallets that exist on your phone, but actually exist in the cloud as well, that can be recovered from the cloud if you lose your phone. It can be protected with your authenticators. So the notion of digital wallets have really taken off over the last couple of years because like the cryptocurrencies have really driven it. And then of course there's people are getting more comfortable with the payment for tapping in that. And then the third piece that's really starting to take off is this notion of, as I said, the verifiable credentials, proofs about me. So you're going to see those things kind of merge into one capability over time.
And do you see a role in government having some ability to help users get their backed up wallets back?
Yeah. I don't think governments will actually be very good at building that kind of infrastructure. And we're actually, nudging industry to build that. Specifically, there's some vendors and some payment providers that are starting to look at that very closely. For example, Interact. They do all the payment system right now for debit between the banks. And it's really not a stretch for them to actually start developing a digital wallet. And then also building on those new capabilities. I'm hoping that, again, this is just Tim's vision, is that they build that technical infrastructure for authentication and claims verification, and we can just kind of dial back as governments and just say, we're just going to focus on issuing claims about you, proofs about you, and we'll just take advantage of that infrastructure.
And this isn't really part of our question sheet, but if, say, a third party was taking care of that, how would you see them getting paid for that service?
Oh, that's the tricky part. I think the business models are very, very tricky.
Yeah.
And I would honestly say we're hedging our bets and making very clear what our requirements are as government, and aligning very closely with what we see as the legitimate industry standards in this place, and just see how the ecosystem plays out. Like the last thing we want is a closed ecosystem that we're locked into.
Exactly.
And that's something that we're very, very, I'm super duper sensitive to this. If we're going to build something, we want to work with trusted partners to build solutions, but don't lock us in. And don't stop us from interoperating with other countries. And if other vendors come online or emerge in the ecosystem, they might be serving a certain constituency. We don't want them locked in. So that's why we're moving very, very carefully in the space. As I said, we're building like an entirely new digital infrastructure here, and just going very close, moving very in a measured way, and making it very clear. I'm making it very clear is that we're building this for the next generation, and we're not going to be rushed into it, and we're going to do it right.
And so I wanted to ask a little bit about Estonia too, in that example. And one of the things that sort of struck me as surprising in the presentation that you did for the Digital Academy was that there's no appetite in Canada or a lot of different spots for like having a one ID to sort of rule everything. And so I was wondering, what's the source? Was that through just user consultations or?
Yep, and just like user consultations, from privacy, etc. You just have to look at how Canada is structured as a country. We have a lot of difficulties, and like we don't have national security regulators. We have different different levels of government, and just the separation of powers in that. And the other thing, the UK tried it, didn't work. Australia tried it, didn't work. And we are trying to move forward in a way that we don't literally have to rewrite the Constitution or do a kind of a mutual aid kind of thing. Just let everybody move in their own pace. And frankly, the other thing too is that just how things have evolved in Canada. A lot of the services that people really care about, like driver's licensing, health, education, they're administered within within the province at the provincial level. They're very close to their citizenry, and how those services are structured or delivered are different in Alberta, different in BC, and whatnot. And there's some operational programs out there already. Like Alberta has one, BC has one, and the thing is that if you build a like a national capability, then the problem with that is that then it just becomes like another system that you have to protect, because then it's like a huge honeypot, and it can become a single point of failure. And the other thing too is that if you build a system that's very resilient, standards-based, and interoperate, it's very segmented. It's actually much more, let's say, resilient to attack, and just it's a better approach. And the other thing too is that there's a lot of institutional change required to do this, and I don't think there's an appetite to actually create a new national institution to do this.
Just one more question. You mentioned that these examples that failed in the UK and different
Yeah.
countries, even within Canada, there's been some initiatives before. What are the factors that usually contribute to that failure? Is it the people are not there, or the infrastructure is not there, or is it just the timing?
Yeah, I would say so. I look at what we did federally. Like this is going back to 2008 when we literally outsourced authentication from the government of Canada. Lot of times the technologies are kind of there, but then the thinking isn't there as well. The models aren't there, and sometimes you get too excited about the technologies, and you think this is the way things are going to play out, and it doesn't play out that way. We did that with public key infrastructure. This is back like 15, 20 years ago. We thought PKI was going to solve everything, and the technological pieces were there, and it just did not play out. And when you're building systems on such a large scale or at a fundamental scale, you really have to be humble about your strategic assumptions, and actually have to be very incremental and very just very measuring in response. I would say what we've been successful in doing over the past decade is that we've separated the authentication from the identity proofing, saying that those are two separate things and two separate capabilities. They get brought together in the end, but we've really enabled like federal departments and agencies say, look, you shouldn't be doing your own sign-in, you shouldn't be doing your own authentication. This can be standards-based. You still have to do your identity proofing, but now we're starting to say, well, the identity proofing, you can actually rely on it from the jurisdictions. You don't have to do it yourself. So it's more, it's funny, I had a discussion this morning with one of the other federal departments. I said, the technology is not so much the question anymore. It's what I call institutional lag. It's getting institutions understand that they fit into a larger picture. And what we are trying to do from the center, from the Treasury Board, is really to set the policy that enables alignment over time. And it's a long and hard job, but that's what I see my role is to understand how things are playing out strategically and say, hey, you got to nudge everybody in this direction and say this is what you should be doing. Don't be building. Yes, we understand that you can actually probably build your own solution pretty quickly, and it might benefit you fine, but you got to realize that you might be offloading a lot of your external costs onto the client or onto other departments. So we have to think about it from a whole of government point of view.
And so you mentioned that you got Alberta to buy in.
Yep.
So what are the incentives from their point of view to join this initiative?
It gives them legitimacy for their own digital identity program. So the big advantage that we have as a federal government is that we have these big programs, Canada Revenue Agency, ESDC, like old age security, employment insurance, social insurance number, all that stuff. Then we come around and we say to the province, you know, you stood up a digital identity program, we want to use it. And then all of a sudden it drives demand for their program, it drives legitimacy, and then it helps them to say to their other like sectors within their jurisdiction, like health and education. Those are the two big, saying, well, the federal government's relying on us, you should rely on us as well. So that's the strategy. Like we've made it pretty clear, like to the big players, is that like save for immigration, we should not be in the business of identity. It should be something that we rely on from the provinces and territories because they have the closer relationship with the individuals. And if we come up with a standards-based approach, something that works across the country, there can be separate systems, different implementations, and that's okay. But if they can actually interoperate and complement each other, then that's the model. Just the analogy that I give is that when you pick up a landline, you pick up a phone, you hear a dial tone, you're not listening to a Rogers dial tone or a Bell dial tone or TELUS. It's just a standard dial tone. Or you don't make decisions when you dial a phone number in. You don't really care about the carrier. Yeah. So that's the idea. Eventually, to abstract that and push that down beneath the surface, so people don't even think about it.
Yeah, from Kevin, he's also wondering, like, I know you mentioned BC's coming on soon. Do you have the timelines for various other provinces, or?
Yeah, BC, hopefully we'll have them on by February. Don't quote me on that because we're still going through like the final assessment, and there may be some other glitches. Quebec is interested as well. We've had initial discussions with them, Nova Scotia. So we're just going to tackle provinces one by one. It's a multi-year effort. It's a multi-year effort. But we set the precedent with Alberta. They went live August 31st, I believe, and BC will be February, I hope. And yeah, I'll take.
Any talks with New Brunswick? I think that's where one of our team.
Pardon me?
There's from New Brunswick is Kirk
okay.
On our team. They seem to be first. They're going pretty hard with building up an identity. They're using the Estonian model to idea, and but it got sort of bogged down. So he's doing some research over Brunswick to see what happens.
Yeah, I know the New Brunswick folks. I haven't really had that specific discussion about how they're going to integrate to the federal programs yet. So really, you know, from a federal standpoint, we're kind of let the provinces do their thing, and then when they're ready, we'll see how we can integrate.
Kevin also was asking about, do you have any comments on what ESDC is doing with the single client view, and do you see, I guess, that it integrates somehow with Sign in Canada?
Yeah, I would say that stuff is a bit downstream for me. Like really what I'm focusing on is what I would say that even before you get to the single client view, that you actually have confidence that you got the right client. And there's a bunch of work that's happening with TELUS Once, and I'm like my view is I just want to get the identity part right, so it actually enables all these other capabilities. Like I have opinions about these architectures. Like I really don't believe that it's about creating like a singular platform, a singular system. It's got to be an ecosystem of services, and really taking the approach more of a decentralized approach, and spending a lot of time just trying to understand those architectures. And what I hope we do is that we change the model where I have my information that's been verified and I can present it to you, to whatever the service provider. This is what you need, and you can provide me services based on that information that I have, and there's no need for you to know anything outside of that context. And I think rightly or wrongly, I think there's still like an architectural view that you got to build these big systems where they are the center of the universe. I'm saying no, the client, the individual is the center of the universe, and you actually have to deliver services within your context, under your legislation, with information that you need, and you may not need to know anything else beyond that.
So that's the issue. Who owns the information? Or you said with the big system you have a one point failure, but if you have decentralized it, that would mitigate that.
Yeah, I would say so. And in terms of like ownership of data, I'm always a bit hesitant to make any pronouncements on that. Like my view is that it's my personal information that I express and that I use, and then in support of a service, a program might have administrative data that they need to administer that service. And I really not crazy about the whole data ownership discussion, because that's kind of like exerting rights over one another. I'm not too crazy about those kind of debates. Like my view is that you're there to provide a service or affect a program outcome, have a very clear understanding of what you need to do that within your accountabilities, within your context, and do the best that you can based on that. So really trying to get away from like the big, that's just my opinion. I get away from the big database kind of model. Like it worked fine for the last 50 years, but we're starting to see all that stuff fall apart and break now. And so I think it's an opportunity, may not in the short term, but I think it's an opportunity to look at things in a completely different way.
You were mentioning the Tell Us Once initiative.
Yeah.
Kevin also was asking sort of your view on the status of that, and I guess how it's going to integrate.
Yeah, lots of open questions there. I know there's a group within Treasury Board led by Teresa D'Andrea that is leading the Tell Us Once, and they're focusing on some use cases, and I know that they've been having monthly meetings and that, and we'll just see how that plays out. My view, this is the way I've sectioned it out of my mind, is that, as I said, I'm really focusing on making sure that the plumbing is right and we can trust the plumbing. And then in terms of user adoption, user experience, I'm viewing that as a separate problem, which is not my expertise at all. And so what Tell Us Once actually means, really I'm leaving it up to those folks to determine that, because I kind of have some ideas of what the models might be like, but that's based on my own experience. I think the way I say, you conceptualize Tell Us Once as an individual coming in the front door presenting their own information, or you're integrating all the stuff at the back end. And we've said we're focusing on individuals coming in the front door with their information. You may need to have a single client view as a back-end integration, that's fine. But I think there's going to be a discussion on how you actually complement or rationalize those different approaches.
Kevin was also wondering about some of the third-party businesses like Salesforce and Microsoft and the various other parties, how they're being involved, or if they have some product that's going to be worth integrating in with Sign in Canada.
Yeah, so we are building Sign in Canada from open source. We have a team. We're doing it very incrementally. We did have an RFP about a year ago. We were going to procure like the next generation of services, and we actually had qualified 4 vendors. I think it was 2Keys, SecureKey, IBM, and Simio. And we were going to like put out for RFP for the next generation of our authentication services, and then we decided to cancel that RFP. And we decided, well, we're going to start building the stuff ourselves and internalize the capability. And we're using an open source vendor. I'm not directly involved. I know the team is very close to me, but we're using an open source vendor called Glue, GLUU. And we've got some developers that are building it. Coming to enterprise vendors, personally, I'm very wary because, as you know, you get a huge contract with a vendor and you get locked in, and then you have no option to migrate, and then we've seen that with our services like, well, oh man, you see that we're still using Internet Explorer like 11 and MyKey, which is based on some Java applet stuff and that. So you get locked into these legacy software that's no longer maintained, and then all of a sudden you get hit with an upgrade or a licensing cost. So I'm really, really reticent myself to like to play with those enterprise vendors. Like, and again, this is just me speaking. I think the new way of doing things is with open source, open licensing, and building that. And the other thing too is that gives you some ability, if everything's out in the clear, that gives you an ability to audit the code and fork it if necessary. And yeah, just stay away from proprietary stuff as much as possible. And maybe you may need proprietary stuff, like some of the implementations may need to be proprietary, but the interfaces themselves need to be standards based. Like I think, like we're in a new age now, and whereas all the the enterprise resource planning, the PeopleSofts, the Oracles, and that, and building data centers with all this stuff, I think we're kind of that age is dying.
That's
And
awesome to see, actually.
pardon me?
I said that's awesome to see you guys are embracing open source.
Oh yeah. And one of the kind of glib phrases I say is, we don't buy from vendors anymore. We buy from ecosystems. So just making it very very clear that with sure you can still deal with vendors, but we don't want to be locked in.
So sorry, just a quick question. So for the big players like Microsoft, Google, what role do they play? Because it's a digital ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
They have a big space. They occupy a big space in digital, Amazon and all.
Yeah.
So what role do they play? Is it a partner? Is there any kind of partnership with?
Yeah. So, and again, I don't know all the full details. Like we do have with Microsoft and with Amazon. I don't think with Google. We do have like procurement vehicles for cloud-based services. So that's one of the key things is that everything's moving to the cloud. We've done our security assessments. We have our protected B profiles. We've negotiated contracts with them, standing offers for services to put them in the cloud. I would say absolutely that's where I see some of those vendors providing very specific prescribed services like cloud services, maybe security services or whatnot. And I think the way to look at it is, as I said, infrastructure, these digital utilities that you want to buy, and that they're easily swapped out. Yeah, and I know IRCC immigration has been very aggressive on some of the cloud-based services and that. So I think it's a new model where you can have these cloud-based services, and you can put in your open source software, and I really don't. Again, this is just me speaking. Like the days of like enterprise software in a data center that's costs millions and millions of dollars a year to maintain, license. Like I see those days are kind of gone. Like nobody has their own services anymore. It's all on Amazon now, or Google, or Microsoft.
And so one of the things you mentioned in your presentation, Kevin's asking also about, is how the whole consent of like giving information and consenting to the usage of your personal information to the various departments and transferring between departments.
Yeah.
How are you guys handling that? Is there like tracking inside, or is you pushing it more on the user and how things will be sort of stored on the user side?
So from a federal standpoint, a lot of our programs are under the Federal Privacy Act, where consent isn't actually required. So you have collection authorities, so there's no need for consent per se. You do need consent under PIPEDA. That's a whole area that's literally going back to the drawing board for rethinking. There's some legislative work that's being done on changes to PIPEDA, and there's the digital charter. And quite frankly, this is the area that I'm least confident in terms of my own knowledge and the way forward. And there's a lot of debate and discussion in the industry and internationally that maybe the traditional consent models aren't the right models. And it's around stewardship or rights, digital rights. And yeah, more to come on that. I think it actually boils down to absolutely minimizing the collection of information. And there's some new technologies that are coming about, like zero knowledge proofs. Like it might be that you don't need to know my date of birth. The only thing that you need to know that I'm over a certain age at a point in time. That's all you need to know to do your service. You don't need all that information about me.
Do you find that the line now is blurred in the digital in regards to the consent? Because there's some information you don't have control over it as a user. It's there. I have the location and all like the background information that you don't have necessarily.
Yeah.
You won't say yes to, and you have no way to control that.
Yeah.
Like that's all that like collecting the like Google and they have so much information. So it's
Yeah.
it's there like now with the consent, you say okay, you guys, I know you guys have the information, but
yeah, I guess the saying goes, the data is not important, the metadata is.
Yeah.
And there are some big policy debates on that happening. Like I think earlier in the summer, like there was the International Grand Committee on Data Protection or something like that that's been like calling Facebook to testify and Google and whatnot. So there's been a lot of like high level discussions on that and what that means. And I think that's a big policy issue that we have to grapple with as a government or as a society. And yeah, my view is that the big players, the Googles and the Facebooks, they just do what they want.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing that like state level governments can actually do about it because they just collect it and it's, they just say, well, we got it. My view is that we actually have to, the only way that we're actually going to practically address this problem is putting in what I've been calling hard privacy controls. Like not privacy controls saying we trust you to do this. No, hard privacy controls in terms of like cryptographic blinding, real encryption, minimal disclosure, zero knowledge proofs, building new systems with some of the new architectures like zero trust networks, and really looking at those types of architectures for us to succeed in the long term. Because my view, I almost think that the bargain that we have between government and corporations is broken. And I'm frankly, I'm a bit worried myself of the geopolitical ramifications. Again, this is just me speaking. I'm not speaking on behalf of the government, but you're starting to see it where China is really exerting their power. And I've heard someone say, well, it's basically they're exporting the firewall, and they're doing it through business means. Like they're telling Hollywood, for example, if you're doing movies about China, you gotta put China in a favorable light. Corporations that have a huge financial interest in China exerts their influence by saying, well, you have to give us, you have to look at us in a favorable light. I'm not being paranoid or anything like that. It's just basically that's the reality. I think the only way we're going to combat that practically is really focusing on developing, like, as I said, hard controls and developing new architectures that can actually protect against that.
And at this point, like the playing field is not level. Like the
No, it
government
isn't.
has mm, no exercise in like what's the role of the government in that. Like I know that China they have a different view to Canada or the United States, but like
Yeah.
to protect the citizen, like what's the role?
Well, I honestly think there has to be a serious policy discussion to really understand the role of the state in relation to these large digital platforms and what we can practically compel those platforms to do or not, and just rethinking what might be the levers or not that the state has, practically speaking. Like I am seeing, like, with cryptocurrency, like with Bitcoin, like that's been an experiment that's been going on for the last 10, 11 years, and it's proven the fact that you can actually have a currency that's not backed by a state. So who knows how that's going to play out over the next 10, 20 years, right? It's already having an impact. You're starting to see like Facebook Libra. Their approach is that they have like 2-3 billion users out in the world, and if they can add in like a private currency into their apps, that's pretty powerful. So the People's Bank of China just did a pivot on blockchain like late in October, and so now they're really going full bore on developing like a cryptocurrency based on the renminbi or yuan. I forget which one it is. Pardon me?
Renminbi is what I saw.
Renminbi. I'm not. Yeah. And then I know Bank of Canada's been looking at this stuff as well. So who knows how this stuff is going to play out. Like what the cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, what it actually proved is that there's these new digital architectures out there that are actually viable and actually can work in what I would call in a multi-actor environment where you can't really assume that you have a trusted third party working on your behalf. So just some new strategic assumptions, and that's where I'm putting a lot of my energy, is trying to understand that from a geopolitical point of view and what the implications might be. Like it may be very few implications back to the present, but it's like, you know what, got to understand this stuff. Like I look at back 10 years ago when we worked on the cyber authentication renewal, mobile phones weren't even on the radar screen. We thought everything was going to be done with the browser and that, and then the mobile came and totally changed everything. Nobody saw that coming.
That's the thing. That's the nature of technology. Nobody to predict it is that's the
yeah. So the key takeaway from me is that you can't predict how the technology is going to evolve or have an impact. The complete opposite. Like we didn't see the mobile, or we didn't see the impact of the mobile device. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we thought PKI, public key infrastructure, was going to take off. It didn't. So, as I said, the lessons I've learned is be very, very humble in your strategic assumptions and be ready to pivot and hedge your bets.
And is it from grassroots to the top level instead of the top level to, like public key, it was a decision that was made.
Yeah.
So right now, with the cryptocurrency, like with the blockchain, it's really like grassroots.
Yeah, like I view my role is to really try to understand these technologies, not so much right down to the nth degree, which I try to do as best I can, but just try to understand it to see what implications it's going to have on policy and our policy positions, and what implications it might have on public institutions, and provide that advice as best I can up the chain. And to their defense, like the ministers and the senior policymakers, they just don't have time to grok the stuff. They have to rely on us to actually understand and provide the best advice as possible. So coming to what we talked about, having a national identity program or a single identity program, providing advice that, hey, that's probably not going to fly in Canada at all. It's a politically fraught thing to advocate, but also practically speaking, it's just probably not going to work. It's just we've just seen too many false starts with some of the big programs out there, like with India and the UK and decentralized systems. They may work, but they are oftentimes fraught with some very severe security issues.
Costly too.
Yeah.
And so I guess as you're talking into the cryptocurrency talk, I've seen some people mention that we could go as far as every person could have their own blockchain, more or less their own currency, like there'd be credit coin, and then if all my information is inside my own blockchain, and then I may with higher privacy, like you're talking about, and possibly even allowing for monetization of, like, those corporations want my information, so they'll have to pay. So did you see any of that sort of playing out?
I think there's a lot of discussion, as I said, there's a new digital architecture, and there's a lot of discussion of how this might play out institutionally, and nobody knows. Like, I would say, when you talk about digital wallets, there's what are custodial wallets, where exchanges or institutions hold your information on your behalf, but they're in your wallet. There are non-custodial wallets, like hardware wallets, like these cryptographic keys, where you keep everything on here, but if you lose it, you're toast.
Yeah.
Okay.
One is the address on the chain, right?
Yeah. And then there's lots of discussion around like recovery, social recovery, key recovery, and all that. Who knows how that's going to play out? Like, even like I try to keep on top of like the key companies that are working on digital wallets, and they don't even know how this stuff is going to play out. And like Apple and Samsung are kind of watching to see how it's playing out. Nobody knows. But I think the new element that has been injected into the infrastructure is the ability for me to control my own information via my keys. That's not really that new, because asymmetric cryptography has been around since the mid to late 70s. But now you have a new architectural primitive in the mix, which is these ledgers that can be maintained either totally in a permissionless environment, where anybody can mine or actually manage the ledger with consensus, but there's also permissioned or private ledgers as well. So there's just some new ways of looking at problems, and honestly, who knows how this is going to play out. In the digital identity world, there's this notion of self-sovereign identity that's getting a lot of traction, which is really, at the end of the day, it's the ability for me to actually present my own identity under my own terms. And I think it's going to, these new models are going to have lots of disruption institutionally. I think the financial world, for example, that's evolved over the past millennia, and with the technology, now with the deposit-taking institutions, they've evolved to sort of like you and me and the retail banks. But now there's technologies that it could actually be directly from the central banks, or be done via other fintech companies. Who knows?
You need a central bank.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think you'll need it. I mean, for some sort of reserve currency. But one could argue with like the Bitcoin max list, you don't need a central bank anymore. Who knows what's going to play out?
So to go back to government a bit more, in your work with Signing Canada, was there, like you had mentioned, that there was 55 government departments that all have their own requirements and stuff. In your work, have you seen any departments that are more open to working with you than others?
Oh yeah. No, we have good close relationships with the big players.
Okay.
And like to everyone's defense, like we're saying you have to use our standards-based solutions, and we do have them. And cost is an issue to some degree, but what we are doing now, the culture change in Treasury Board and CIO now is not so much just to be a policy shop to tell you what to do. We're actually building stuff to prove it, to say, hey, this actually works, and this is something that we should evolve, and that's what we're doing with Sign in Canada.
And were there smaller players? Like I think Kevin had mentioned one of the things he thought it might be an early win is the job bank and and student loan. Are they some of the ones that are pretty open to?
Yep. Actually, we're having discussions. Like job bank is part of Service Canada, and we were talking Canada student loans. Yeah, those eventually come out. What we want to do is provide a single point of entry into the Government of Canada with what we're calling like an acceptance platform that whether you sign in with Alberta or BC or whatnot, you can come in and then go to the service of your choice. It's going to take years to change the architecture, but it will happen eventually. It's really hard to tell departments to like integrate to a service that doesn't exist yet, right? So that's what we're trying to do.
And is there much analysis like into each of these departments? Is there much analysis in like what information they required to process an application and any sort of categorization of that information?
Yeah, there's a group, the service policy group has done some analysis in that space. I don't have that handy, but the service folks have done that. They've done a service inventory. I don't know how detailed that they've gone in terms of the specific requirements of the services, but I believe under the service policy there's requirements for departments and agencies to report on the services that they provide.
Because I think well, at least one of my ideas is we'd like to leverage possibly if we have to. If not, we'll probably just go scrape some forms.
Yeah.
But if someone's already done the legwork, it would be
great
to get access to that.
Yeah, I could see like you can contact the service folks, or I can switch it to them, see if there's some information that we can provide you.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you have anything more, I think I'm pretty close to the end. I just have one other one. So we're not exactly sure where our application's going to fit in the stack necessarily, or if how successful it will be. But do you have any developers on your team that would be interested in sharing some information on just sort of maybe some ideas that we would need to help if we're going to hook in together? Or is it maybe too early?
Yeah, I'm going to say like send me what you're looking for, and I can redirect it to the Sign in Canada team, see if they can help you out. I can't really commit on their behalf, but we do have information that we can provide you, and we actually have like a beta platform up and running. And if there's a way that we can actually have you guys integrate in, that would be fabulous, because we're trying to make it as simple as possible.
That sounds
Yeah, like I know on the front end, like we've got Alberta in the test, and I think BC, and we're actually I know there's discussions to integrate Interact as well. And then in terms of whatever service that you're doing, like there may be an opportunity for you to integrate in the back end. So what are you folks thinking about doing?
Well, I think like it might be a while before we contact you. It's like it'll be in January where we start our practice.
Oh, okay. So you got a bit of time.
And so we got a bit of time. Well, we've been, like I said at the start, we've been going back around to try to get a good feel for what our actual end goal is.
Okay.
But the basic idea is to help Canadians get their information in and be able to control how the government uses their information.
Yep.
And so say you go to Passport Canada and you have all your friends, your doctor, whoever else needs to approve, sign your form. So you have all that information, and then say another government department needs some piece of that, say employer.
So I would suggest looking at what we did with Talent Cloud. And we did a pilot project with a company called Learning Machine with a digital wallet. It's an open source digital wallet called BlockCerts. And what we did with Talent Cloud, they may be the folks to work with, is that we worked with the free agent community where they had their digital credential, their free agent credential issued into their digital wallet. And so I think I do have it here. So the idea here is, yeah, BlockCerts. It's like a digital wallet, and then I have my certificate that shows my information of my certificate of the stuff. This is just a mock one, but it's my free agent certificate that has my information, which then I can share that information with you, and it's been verified by Talent Cloud. So my recommendation is to explore this model. So it's verifying the certificate there against Talent Cloud, for example. And we're looking to do like another pilot project with an extension with BlockCerts into the larger ecosystem with the verifiable credentials and decentralized identifiers. So this is a model that we experimented with and was very successful, so that I as an individual have my information on my phone that I can back up or whatever. There's all that stuff about backing up and recovery and all that. But the thing is, I got the stuff here, and it's mine, and then I can present it to you as a service provider to use. So that's something I would look at, as opposed to like integrating on the system side, equipping individuals to use this. And we are experimenting with Sign in Canada, is how we can accept these claims directly from a digital wallet for use by a department or agency. So that's like, I'm pretty excited about this technology, and where it would go. To me, it's the future.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Just to play the devil's advocate, so what do you say for people like to give the choice to the user, like not force the user to use the digital, but do you think like, in the future there's no choice, like in regards to getting the services from the government, you have to go through the digital way, or
Well, I guess I look at it this way: is that yeah, for sure we want to give choice, right? And we want to be standards based, but you don't want to have choice from like a horribly fragmented system or fragmented ecosystem with a bunch of proprietary players. It's like the vision, in my view, with the verifiable credentials, that here it is, you can put it in your wallet of choice. It could be an Apple wallet, Samsung wallet, or like other wallets that you trust. And as I said, like accepting a credential, you'll have limited choice in what digital identity credential you provide, because we might say we're only prepared to trust a government issued one from a province, but your academic credentials could come from any academic institution, and it's really up to the relying party or the service provider to decide what they want to use. Like, the idea in my mind, what we are trying to do is, I say, we're trying to take the technical out of trust and develop a capability that you don't even have to worry about authenticating yourself. You don't have to worry about, once your information is verified, it's under your control, and you can present it in the way that you want without actually having it dial back home to like the issuing authorities. And that applies to just your name and date of birth. It applies to your passport document. It can apply to your academic credentials. So it's just an entirely new model to look at things.
Sort of the same vein is that sometimes people aren't able to use say digital technology, and so a family member or someone else, or if there's death, like
Yeah.
has that been sort of thought about too?
Yeah, what's cool about this technology, it could actually literally be printed out as a QR code on a piece of paper and then actually be read in and cryptographically verified as well. So I think, you know, the idea here is eventually the boundaries between digital, physical, and analog are just going to go away. And I would say, like the first, like we have the offline model with paper,
Yes.
and then we have the online model, centralized systems, and now we're kind of moving into this area of where it doesn't really matter. And it'll take us a long time to get there, but really putting in place some new thinking, some new approaches where it doesn't really matter. So if I show up with a paper certificate, it can be read and ingested, or with a digital certificate, it can be put in. It doesn't really matter anymore. So it's just new conceptual models that we're getting a grip on, and that's what we're doing with work on the trust framework. Is we're putting a lot of effort into conceptualizing these things. So, you know, having discussions like we're working on the trust framework as we speak, and I had a discussion this morning or yesterday and this morning about saying, you know, how the models change, like with usernames and passwords. What we're doing is that we're taking the notion of credential and we're kind of pulling it out of the system and making it stand by itself, that it's under the control of the individual, and then understanding what this new mental model will look like and how it's going to be applied. And then I would say from that, then we'll figure out what the policy framework would be around that. So that's the approach. That's always been the approach that I've taken, is that really try to understand these new technologies, these new approaches, try to come up with a simple holistic model, and then once you got that, then start writing policy requirements around that.
Yeah, I think it's a whole new world that's gonna.
Yeah.
It's hard to get your mind around it, like the way we are used to things right now.
Yeah.
To where we're gonna be. It's gonna be a super exciting journey.
Yeah. I would say, like, you know, the first generation was offline versus online.
Yes.
And mimicking what you do in the offline world in the models of the first generation online worlds. And now we're moving into this area of digital. And I think there's a lot of debate what digital actually means. To me, it's a temporary moniker. It's probably going to eventually go away, but I would say the thinking is that there's actually no distinction between online, offline, digital, like independent of what I've been saying, substrate independent. It's independent of, the concepts are independent of whether it's implemented on paper or implemented digitally, and just looking at it from that perspective and rethinking how you do things. And then adding in some new concepts like minimal disclosure, zero trust, zero knowledge proofs, and thinking about those new concepts and say, okay, how can we incorporate that into these new models? And again, I might be like totally far out, but really, I'm trying to think of what are the building blocks for the next generation of services, and what might they look like? Yeah.
There's a huge impact on different, you see, like financial institutions, for example. It's a whole new world as well. So.
Oh yeah. Like with open banking, like with I think one of the biggest impacts is going to be in the financial services with open banking. Like there's a lot of talk about know your client requirements, anti-money laundering, the banks proofing your identity before they actually provide you with the service. And we're starting to say, well, the digital identity is going to be provided directly from the client themselves, and you won't have to do any of the identity proofing anymore when you open up a bank account because it's already been done, and they're presenting it to you, and it totally changes their models. And then you have certain institutions saying, well, we actually want to keep that because it's an opportunity for us to kind of lock in our customer. Or they may say, we don't want the requirements of government issued identity because we want to do it ourselves, again, to lock in our customers. And I think the financial institutions are going to be in a, we're kind of flipping, it's that kind of, when the river starts flowing the opposite way, and then you got to start paddling in the opposite direction. That's what I see what's going to be happening. So just making sure we're ready for that. Like we're making it pretty clear that like digital identity, foundational identity, like who you are, how you prove who you are, is going to be a function of government. And if we do it right, it's going to enable a lot of downstream activities, economic activities. We're not ready to give that up to the financial sector or to other sectors or commercial providers. We've seen things happen in the UK where they try to develop those markets and with very middling success. And then when those commercial providers leave the market because they're not making any money, then the government's left holding the bag for those individuals that can no longer access their government services. And this is not a good situation to be in. So, it's as I said, I'm looking at it from an ecosystem point of view and saying, okay, how is this going to play out? So.
The interesting thing with our problem is I remember the first week we started about signing. Is it going to be used by password? Is it going to be used by key? Is it going to be used like a Facebook thing? So we thought it's really like on that specific authentication. But the issue is actually, like as you mentioned, there are layers to it. It's not just that piece that can be authenticated anyway. Like today, it's password. Can be like in 5 years, can be something different.
And rightly so, because as you transition to digital services, the first thing that you run into is you got to know who you're dealing with, and then you have to authenticate them, you have to prove them, and then you look out there and you realize that the services there aren't all that great, and so then you immediately go to let's build our own for identity proofing, and that's what happens, and that's okay within your own context, and that's the problem we're trying to solve, is that you don't have to do that anymore. That you can actually focus on the value add of your service and not worry about who the individual is. And so it's going to take us a while. I would say we're not there yet, but we'll get there eventually. So you don't think about, like, probably 15, 20 years ago, it was the first question is, okay, how are we going to set up our network connectivity? How are we going to configure our network cards? And how are we going to configure our network? And how are we going to get our firewalls? And so all the energy was in that. That was like 20 years ago. And now nobody even thinks about that stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of, the next wave is the identity piece. And, it's not solved yet, but it will be solved eventually.
So that's the thing. So once you know who you are dealing with, now how are you going to serve that individual? How are you going to serve that individual better?
Yeah.
And one of the aspects that Kevin brought in is, okay, when somebody applies for an EI, have to fill in the form for the address and all that stuff. And then when he applies for another program within ESCC, he has to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So how are you going to integrate those?
Okay, so there's some really funky new technologies that are coming about called, and again, I don't know how technical you want to get, but I've pretty excited about what's called Hyperledger Indy Aries. And it's basically an agent protocol. And all this stuff is open source. Actually, the Province of BC has actually really done some great work. And I would say if you're going to look at doing something, I would actually start using their their code base. Basically, it's Hyperledger Aries, and I think I should know the code names. Ursa, I think, is all the cryptographic stuff, but Aries, it's basically an agent-to-agent protocol. And this is the idea here. That's not permanent. An agent is just a fancy word for any software running on your behalf, okay? And whether it's in the cloud or on your device, it's immaterial, right? And then you have another agent, so this could be you, and this could be your service, okay? So they've come up with a really nice abstraction of, first of all, you have to negotiate a connection. It's basically all your authentication stuff, okay? Connection. So you've got a secure connection between this agent and that agent. And this may be an agent that's on my phone, okay? And then this agent is starting to look for what are called credentials or claims to do its business. So it may need to know that you're over 19, you live in BC, and maybe it needs to know that just for sake of argument, those are the two things it needs to do the business, maybe to sell you liquor or something like that, or get an immunization shot. So then there's a protocol that will go over here, and in the agent, you basically have all of your stuff in these, what are called these credentials, verifiable credentials, that are issued by like the province or whatever, all that information. You could have your address. So all this stuff is sitting in your wallet, okay? And then what happens here is that the agent says, I need to know this information. Are you over 19 and do you live in BC? So the technology, the approach is that that request comes across, and the agent presents to the user saying, this is what we're looking for. Over 19, do you live in BC? Okay. And then it will reach, and if you get permission, then the agent will go in here, pull the information that it needs, and then it creates the proof, which is basically meets this request, BC, and wraps it up with all the crypto stuff that it needs, and that gets fired across, and then the agent can actually verify that proof to say, yeah, I got that information, we're good to go. And so as opposed to like the old way of doing things was that